I've always been fascinated, like many people, with the mind. Why do we see what we see? What's the point? Why are we attracted to things we're attracted to? Why does anger get our attention? What is it in the human system that essentially oftentimes controls us? We are not living, we are being lived. And that's one of the questions I really have spent my life trying to create tools and instruments that allow us to examine the question of, well, who am I then, away from the noise of the world? What does it mean? That's why we're standing once again in the garden, because we're looking at the sense of not what is simply personal, but what is deeply human. And that's why I'm constantly moved by the line that Buddha said. He said, you are not your thoughts, you are what thinks. He also said something fascinating about resist not evil. And I thought, well, what does that mean? And essentially, it's a type of mental martial art of energy itself, meaning that what we resist, we amplify. What we allow to flow through us allows itself to dissipate and doesn't become stopped up or dammed up within us. So a great deal of our energy now is how do we use our mental energies wisely? And where do we use these energies? And I think we are all being faced with a great test of, in a world that, as the last flood was water and this flood is information, how do we navigate this? And part of our condition, part of our quantum truth, is that thoughts are things. In other words, what we imagine, we ultimately enliven. We know this directly from dreams. If you have a bad dinner or something, you have indigestion, you're suddenly in Dante's Inferno. We realize there was a translation of a physiological experience into a mental state or a visual state. We don't realize that this is a lot of what we do in so-called reality, is what we imagine, we begin to, by repetition, grow. And once it begins to grow, this is what Carl Jung got at. He said that once these subjective beings are created, they essentially develop a life of their own, like anything, wishing to survive. And so they begin to develop away from the individual that gave birth to them. And this in ancient times was known as an egregore, or a thought form. And so one of the keys here in the garden is to think about a question: am I having my own thoughts, or am I being thought? Are these questions that I'm thinking about making me angry? Because then my energy is being taken away from me and it is being utilized aggressively. How do I return my thinking and my energy to myself? And this is something that is very essential now, because we're going to perceive on a deeper imaginative level that what we are growing and where we are growing it in the long run is that which will create a new conductivity, a new creation story of a gathering of energy, because we began to think it possible. And there's a marvelous, and I'll end with this, that a butterfly in the cocoon doesn't have wings, but it creates what's called imaginal cells. It begins to imagine its wings. So my question is, why don't we begin to imagine our wings? Because I, for one, know we are capable of flight and not losing our way, but finding our way home. But it's only the better story that will do so. And if we attend this, we become part of that better story.